let's take a look at how easy it is to install my custom workspaces and my custom image hose nozzles. So after you've made a contribution on my website, I'll be emailing you a link that you can use to download the files. And once you've got the files on your computer, you will have a zip file, which is just all of the files that you need compressed together into a single file. You'll double click on it and you'll extract all files. It might be a little different on Mac. Once the files are extracted, you'll open the folder that they extract to, and you'll see that there's a few different files in here. You have your installation instructions, of course, if you wanted to follow along with these, or you can just watch this video. Same thing. I recommend that you update to Painter 12.2 before you do any of this. You don't necessarily have to do this. The image hose nozzles will still work, but it's good to upgrade to 12.2 just to make sure that you have all the functionality that I have, especially the flow map feature that doesn't come with Painter until version 12.2. So you can get to that by going to their website, go to support, patches and updates, and then select the appropriate update for Macintosh or Windows computers. So back to our folder here. There's a few different files because some people might want to replace their workspace altogether, and then some people might want to just merge some of the things that I'm offering into their workspace. So I'm giving you those two options. The easiest is to run one of these workspace files. The HD TV is for a larger screen, so if you've got more screen real estate, the palettes are more spread out and there's more brushes and everything. And then I made a laptop version that's a little more compact. It still has all the image hose nozzles. There's just a lot less going on your screen, so some of the palettes are kind of hidden away, but they both have all the same features. The workspace is just set up a little differently to accommodate the size of the screen. So it's up to you whichever one you want to install here, depending on what you have. And you can always adjust these afterwards too, to suit your monitor. For those who want to merge their workspaces together, I have the brushes. These are the brushes that I've made changes to that you can just import really easily into your current workspace. Same goes for the nozzles. You can import these into your nozzles library if you don't want to replace your whole workspace. So I'll show you how we can install this. I recommend the first thing that we do after you've upgraded Painter, you should save the current workspace that you have. That way if we replace it, I don't want you to be angry with me that you lose your workspace if it's something that you have set up the way you like. So if you go to Window, Workspace, Export Workspace, you can export your workspace to a file and put that somewhere where you'll be able to find it. And then that way, if you don't like the way that I have mine set up and you want yours back the way it was, you can just run that file and everything will go back to how it was before you changed it. So after you've done that, we want to close Painter, because one of the things that it recommends that we do after upgrading Painter, and it's probably better that we're just all on the same page here. Let's restore Painter to its default settings real quick. So what we do is we select Painter and we hold down Shift, and this is that could be the icon on your desktop or the icon that came with Painter when it installed. Hold down Shift and keep holding it down. Run the program. Don't let go of Shift until you see this window here, and then we'll click on All Workspaces, and this will reset all of Painter's settings back to their default. So then you and I will be looking at more or less the same thing. This is, again, I mentioned this is recommended on Painter's website after you update to 12.2, so you want to do this. I'm going to just turn this off and close this. Okay. So this will be more or less how your interface will look by default. So we're going to change it a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Workspace and we're going to go to Import Workspace. And we're just going to find the file that we want. And that's here under Workspace. This is the file that we downloaded from the link. And we're going to pick HD TV because I'm using a big TV. So we're just locating this Workspace file. Going to open. And it's going to take a minute to switch over. It depends on how fast your computer is, but just be patient, it'll do its thing. And you'll see that it's switching, and what it's going to do is it's going to rearrange all of the palettes to the way that they are in my workspace. You may have to fix this window here just by maximizing it. On Windows, that's pretty easy. You could just double click on the bar here, or if you're on a Mac, you might have to do it differently. You might just have to scoot the window around. Nevertheless, make the window full screen and fix that if that happens to you. So now we have the workspace the way I have it set up, and this matches the workspace in my video tutorials. So if you're working with this, it should be pretty easy to follow. If you do want to move some stuff around, you can. You can drag any of these palette groups by dragging the bar. You can expand and collapse them by double clicking on the name of the palette. So you can see there's just some extra stuff kind of hidden here. This is most of the commonly used stuff that I use. I mean, some of this I don't use, but I just included it in here in case we ever need to go over it in one of my videos. But a lot of it is stuff that I use on a regular basis. These are all brushes that come standard with Painter, but some of the settings are changed. So, for instance, the digital airbrush, I have the opacity set very low. This custom scratchboard tool, I have calibrated in a certain way. I have a chalk brush that blends instead of depositing color. And then of course we have all of our hose brushes that I created here for our image hose. So depending on whether or not you get the advanced or the master version, you might have all of the brushes or you might have half as many. The advanced version doesn't come with all the brushes that you see here, but the master does. So you can see that was pretty easy to install the workspace. If you wanted to switch back to a different workspace, or if you want to get your old workspace back, you just go to Import Workspace and select the file that you want to load as your workspace. So the workspace is really cool because it loads all of these brushes, all of these palettes, all of your image hose brushes, and some extra content that I have here in the paper libraries. So it really encapsulates everything. It's really convenient because you didn't have to go through and install any of these things separately. However, if you do want to, and you don't like the way I have my workspace laid out, and you just want to be able to merge these image nozzles or some of these brushes into your workspace, that's really easy to do. All you have to do is in your nozzle libraries palette, click the submenu here, and then go to Import Nozzle Library, and we will locate the file. It's in the Nozzles folder, and you can pick any one of these 3 files. You'll want to load all 3 of them, and when you do, it'll automatically load these nozzles into your nozzles library without having to change your workspace at all. Same goes for these brushes. If you wanted to load these brushes, you go to your Brush Selector, go to the submenu, and then you go to Import. You can import the individual brush if there's just one that you want. That's in the Brushes folder, so you can pick these individually. Or if you want to just import the whole group that I have there, you can go to Import Brush Library. And if we go to the folder that it's in the brushes, you can see I just have the whole library there. So it makes it really, really easy to either just replace your workspace or integrate it with the one that I have here. Since we reset Painter, it resets some of your preferences. So you may want to go to your preferences and just make sure that those are all the way you want them. I'm seeing that one of these settings got changed, so I'm going to change this to full screen to fix that, and then just look and make sure if there's anything else that's not set correctly. Everything else looks good, so watch out for that. It may be that my workspace changes some of your preferences too, so just make sure that everything's kind of the way you want it. This thing pops up sometimes even if I restore the workspace, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't use that. And then also another thing that I noticed is after resetting the workspace, the paint bucket resets, and by default the paint bucket does this. when you try to use it, it fills it with this cactus or these flowers, whatever they are. That's not helpful. The way the paint bucket's supposed to work is it's supposed to fill with your current color, so you change that up here in this menu, and now you can use the paint bucket in a useful way. Every time you change your workspace, you might have to change this setting every time. I find that it keeps switching back automatically, so just watch out for that. And another thing to mention, you can have multiple workspaces, and you can go between them anytime you want. So if you only want to use mine temporarily, you can do that, and you can go back to yours. The boulders brush, if we get an image hose, suggests that we use the linear size P brush. That's this one here. And the way I recommend using it is to kind of build up these clumps, and you can make any kind of shape you want. You'll notice that when you go up, you kind of see the underside of the rock, and when you go down, you see the top side. So you'll have to kind of watch that with most of these brushes. They all kind of have a certain direction that you have to go with them, but you can make like a big, stone arch pretty easily. And you can see how it gives the impression that you're looking at the underside of it, and then it curves over to the top side. So you'll want to make sure that when you're drawing, you account for that. So notice on the underside, I'm painting in an upwards direction. Then when I get over here, I'm painting downwards. Because if I don't, and I start painting up this way, then you start to see the underside and it messes it up. Same goes for this. You can make really big boulders, different kinds of rocks. You can make those little small ones if you want. You can do just about anything. And then I recommend that you go through with some of these if you want, and maybe use something like the blender to kind of blend them together, just to kind of make them look a little less like a stamp. Just gives them a little extra character too. Just blend some of these seams basically. Or if you wanted to, you could use the Distorto brush to augment them a little bit. That works pretty well too. And then if you wanted to tint them, you could do that. Of course, you would want to make them on their own layer to do that. So let's try that. I'll show you real quick how we can tint some of these boulders so that they don't have to all be brown. And this goes for everything in here too, that you don't have to necessarily stick with these colors per se. You can change them a little bit. So I'm making a new layer and setting it to multiply. And I did a selection of my boulder there. So there you go, you can see we tinted it a little bit. We can change the color. If we wanted it to be more yellow, we could do that. If you just wanted to make it gray, that's not hard to do either. You can go to Effects, Tonal Control, Adjust Colors, and you can just turn the saturation down. And there you go, now you've got a gray rock. So it's really easy to adjust all of these things. The branches one, I'll show you real quick. You have to use the linear size P angle D. That's about the only brush that it'll work with. And you don't want to use too big of a brush. But your first branch you want to be pretty wide. So I'm trying to make sure that when I paint, I'm making these sequentially kind of line up, because if they get disjointed like that, it's not going to work. So you have to kind of try to draw a pretty even line. If you have to go over it in a couple spots, you can too. I'm using firm pressure too, because if you use light pressure, they come out thinner, rather than if you push down hard, they come out thicker. I also want it to kind of taper off on the end. Something like this. So that's our first branch, and then we want to do some branches that come off of that. Oops. Like so. You have to kind of, this doesn't work perfectly, but Works pretty well. It's a really complicated brush to make, actually. Took a lot of thought to figure out how to make this. But there you go. You can see you can make limbs pretty easily. The clouds are pretty straightforward. They're a lot like the boulders, where you just kind of clump them together, and then you can use different sizes, of course. Some of these, like the fire, might suggest that you use screen as the blend mode, so you'd want to change your blend mode. It tends to work better like that. Foliage is, again, like the boulders. It just kind of builds up. Your grass you can use with a linear brush, or if you wanted to, you could use it with a spray brush too. That would work just as well. A lot of these brushes are kind of compatible with a lot of different image hose types. What else do we have? Ice is pretty cool. That one we want to use with the linear P. So if you wanted to make like a icicle or something, that's pretty easy to do. Or like a big frozen stalagmite or something. Or you could do big, big ice boulders. Works just kind of like the boulders do. And you'd be surprised too. I was working with this brush the other day and I realized it actually works really well for clouds too. If you wanted to make some really surreal looking clouds, that's not too hard to do. You'd probably want to refine these a little bit. Like you could go through with the blender, and after you've painted it, you could kind of blend it a little bit to kind of help it look more realistic. So it's just kind of a starting point. You could probably make rocks with this too, and who knows, maybe even broccoli or something. If you tinted it green, that would work pretty well for that. There's a limb brush. Works kind of similar to that branch brush that I had, where you can just draw limbs. It works better if you use a thinner brush here. You get a limb. It looks a little like a stamp because you can see these repeating patterns. So this is probably another one of those ones where you're going to want to go through with a blender and blend it a little bit so that you can't see that repeating pattern so much. You can even throw some texture on it too. That helps a lot for it not to look like an image hose brush was used. It's kind of the goal, is to have this image hose stuff be kind of a foundation and then change it a little bit, because if you use it too straightforward and you're just using just the brush on its own, I imagine that your artwork's not going to look all that convincing or realistic. So you got a branch. The pebbles work better with the spray brushes. For some of these, you'll want to have the illusion of perspective, so you'll want your stuff that's more distant to be smaller, and then whatever's closer to you needs to get larger. And that'll work really well to give the illusion that these things kind of go off into the distance, if that makes sense. We'll take a look at some of the abstract ones real quick. These don't really need any explanation of how to use them because there really isn't much of a how, but you just kind of can go through and figure out what to do with them here. So you've got these marbles here if you wanted to make just a marble pattern, or you could do some really crazy stuff where you can vary the size and shape, and you could just paint with them. And a lot of these I just made and kind of experimented with and didn't really have any intention of what to do with them ahead of time. Just kind of made them and just looked to see what they do. And hopefully this encourages you to make some of your own image hose brushes. They're pretty easy to make. You could just throw all this down and you could go over it with a blender and blend it, you know, if you wanted to, and make some really weird stuff, or use I'm not really sure what I'm getting at here. I'm just kind of showing you that, you know, some of these things initially you think don't really have much use, but then you can augment them a little bit, and then you can make some pretty wacky looking stuff. So there you go, you got some modern art now. I think that looks pretty cool, actually. So you can take a look through here and see what else there is that you want to use. This pastel one is kind of nice. Show you real quick. Get image hose brush. It's good to, again, vary the size and scale sometimes. So I'm doing little tiny ones near the edges and big ones in the center. And there you go, we've got some more instant artwork here that looks pretty cool. And then if you wanted to, again, you can go through and just blend it a little bit, just to make it not look so repetitive. So these are really fun to play with. So I'm not going to go through all of these, you know, that's for you to do. You can go through and check it out and see what you like to use and have some fun with them. Anyways, I think that's probably enough to get you started. If you do have any questions about installing the files, or if you're having some trouble using them, just shoot me an email and let me know what the problem is, and I can help you get it sorted out. If you do end up getting these brushes and you're happy with them and you like your results, you should comment on this video or one of my YouTube videos related to the workspace or the nozzles, and just let people know what you think about them. That would be really helpful. Thanks for watching, and have fun with these brushes.